Did we do it? I believe we are actually live now. For real, for real.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to another WandaVision discussion thing, recap discussion thing. We forgot about the recap part of this until 60 seconds ago, though, so
She
uh,
says we really kindly. I forgot about it. I appreciate the
we're in
solidarity.
this together, okay?
We are. Oh, sorry, that was me. Yeah, so we're going to do our best here to recap the episode that happened tonight. A lot happened, but also the good news is that a lot of it was like layered on top of things that we have already seen. Um, so I think we're gonna jump right into it, right? Recap time.
Yeah, recap time. Go for it.
All right. So we start with Monica, who we have known so far as Geraldine, and she like reappears in a hospital room. Like we see her actually being like assembled back together, and
Post
immediately my thought,
unsnap. She's from the
yes,
unsnap phase.
yes.
So Avengers
Well, I was gonna say
stuff.
my thought immediately was when that happened. Like I wasn't, my head wasn't there, like snap or blip
Mm,
or whatever. Like I was thinking, like, oh my gosh, because we've seen all of these things that are like simulation-y, right?
right.
So that's where my head was. I was like, why is she being like reassessed? I thought she was heading back into Wanda's thing. So it
Aha.
took me like a second to realize what was going on, and it happens that she like feels like she's waking up. She runs out into the hospital, and people everywhere are like starting to reappear post snap or blip or whatnot. So, I also, again, I don't know if you had ever thought about this, but like the logistics of like reappearing after the snap or the blip in the hospital,
We're gonna
things go start,
yes. Yes. I have so that
things
I have
start
I want to
going
talk about that
wild.
forever. Okay. I could make that the whole conversation. Uh
So the hospital is like going wild because people are appearing all over the place, and you hear people yelling like, we're at capacity, there's no way we can handle this. And Monica is searching for the patient in the room where she was, which at first we don't know who it is, but finally a doctor sees her and recognizes her and is like, Monica, what are you doing here? And she's like, I'm looking for my mother. So it's up to this doctor to break the news that her mother actually died, and her mother died 3 years ago, and she's been missing for I think 2 years. So she was part of the blip and the snap.
this
So
is
she
also
has come back
significant
into
too
this world.
because that moment is also like when we're clarifying her like pre-existing tie to the MCU, because she's like, my mom is Maria
Yes,
Rambeau. Like,
you're right.
that's who I am. Remember me? I'm the precocious kid from Captain Marvel.
And then when she's waking up, we have this moment where we are hearing, um, like scenes or clips or sound bites from Captain Marvel, including Captain Marvel's voice telling her basically like you're trouble, Captain Trouble, or whatever it is that she calls her. So that was a really neat tie-in as well. We cut after that to basically Monica joining, like going back to Sword and kind of trying to pick up where she left off, except for things are a little bit awkward because, she's been missing for so long. And also because in her absence, there's a new acting director of Sword. So, and also because he immediately like tells her, you're grounded. Like you're the missions you have to take on, like you can't necessarily just jump right back into this. So he assigns her to go with a character we have seen before, Jimmy Woo, to investigate a missing persons case in the town of Westview, New Jersey. And so she's like, why missing persons? Like, why would I do that? But they're sending out a sword drone to go help the FBI investigate this. And basically, Monica's there to babysit the drone. So she gets to Westview, and Jimmy immediately starts filling her in on what's happening. And basically, they started calling the missing person's family, and we're like investigating because he was under witness protection program, and the family is like, who? Like they didn't even remember him. And to further demonstrate the weirdness of this all, like he brings Monica over to the sheriff's, and they're standing in front of the "Welcome to Westview" sign, and they're like, "Westview, there's no such thing." And she goes, "Where are you guys from?" And they're like, "Eastview." So something really weird is happening where like this town has been erased from everybody's memory. So they get ready to fly the drone into the town, and then it like disappears after it hits a certain marker. So Monica gets close to kind of investigate, and she sees that there's some sort of like barrier there that doesn't allow them to see further in. So being the person that she is, she sticks her hand in and goes too far and gets sucked into this whatever it is, this simulation. So we'll talk about it, but this pretty quickly confirms our theory that this is a real place and real people that are like caught up in what Wanda is doing. So from there, I guess Sword starts looking to further investigate like what's going on here, and they bring on another familiar face, which is Darcy Lewis, now a doctor, Dr. Darcy Lewis,
Love
to
that
and a
glow.
bunch of other like I know now a in the top of her field, an expert in her field. We love to see it. So they bring her on with a bunch of other like specialists in their areas to try and figure out what's going on in Westview. And Darcy is able to pick up on the fact that there's like some what does she find? Microwaves, radio waves,
Cosmic
waves,
background radiation. Yeah.
it's background radiation that she can't quite explain, but she does pick up that in the radiation there's also broadcast, like a broadcast happening. So she asked somebody for an old-timey non-flat TV. And basically she is able to pick up on the broadcast, and we watch her and everybody at Sword watching WandaVision. So back in the first episode, and everybody's like, is that Wanda? And isn't Vision dead? What the hell is happening here? So they start like observing the events inside of the town, and then they start figuring out that the people in the TV show are like the real residents of the town. So they start like matching up the cast of the show to like the real people from the town. And so they also quickly find Monica there as Geraldine. And they're very confused as to whether or not she's like playing a part, if she doesn't know who she is or what's going on exactly. They try, Jimmy and Darcy try to use like the radio to contact Wanda, which we saw back in episode
Two, I
one
think.
or two, episode two, where we hear basically Jimmy saying, "Wanda, Wanda, who has you there? Why is this happening?" So that was him, and they are not sure that it is successful because while Darcy is watching it, she kind of sees that something's happening, but then the broadcast just kind of skips. It like skips ahead to this moment where like it's over. Then, when we see Monica mention Ultron, it happens again where she's like watching Monica bring up Ultron, and they're like, "What the heck is happening here?" And then it skips again. So suddenly Monica is gone. But from Monica's perspective, we see when Wanda like really starts threatening her and saying like, "You don't belong here. You're not part of my town, my community," and she blasts her out of whatever this thing is. And then we also see when Monica like lands, the agents all surround her and they start kind of trying to figure out what happened to her. Back in the sitcom, Wanda momentarily sees Vision as he appears when he was dead. So, like, he's got, the big gash in his head. And so she's like shaken for a bit, but she restores the illusion. And Vision also has this moment where he's like, "We could leave here. We could, get out of here." And Wanda's like, "Mm-mm, this is our home." And creepy. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything key?
Yeah, I think so. That's the gist. That's all the essentials of all of this, confirmation that Wanda's doing this and that Sword is possibly I guess we're still not 100% sure that what they're doing is containment, but or at least not entirely containment, but
Investigation. It's more, trying to figure out what happened. So yes, I thought for a little bit that Sword was going to be like was a little more in the know and trying
Mm-hmm.
to contain, but they have no idea
They
what's
don't know.
happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's also like the most, for all of the ways in which the show has been doing very meta, like TV, tropes and sitcom callbacks and stuff. It is this way of like rewinding and giving us the sword stuff was just so good. Like having them go back and be on TV. There's a bit where they're like early stages of trying to figure it out right after Darcy has them, you know, once they realize it's a sitcom. There's a bit where they're like writing on a like questions on a whiteboard and they're like, is Vision alive? Why sitcom? uh and it's great
they're
because
also
it's like
questioning.
these are the questions that the like the audience, you're like, okay, isn't Vision dead? Why the fuck is this Marvel thing a sitcom? Like whatever. Yeah, and then all like going there and then getting towards this sort of end that like Wanda is doing this and like there is all of this tragedy and it's like, yes, Wanda chose to, she said, fuck the dramatic story that I have been written into. I reject this. I'm now in a sitcom. uh,
Yeah.
so
I'm gonna Nick is saying your mic is a little quiet,
mm,
Nicole, but um I will also back us up here because we're jumping ahead of ourselves a little bit, and maybe everybody knows the answer to this question already. But we always start the episode after the plot synopsis asking if we enjoyed it. Did you like it? How did you feel about episode 4 overall?
yeah, I mean, we got ahead of ourselves, so I've already answered this question to say that I really enjoyed it. I guess I could. It's possible that I really liked that meta stuff, and I hated everything else about it. Um, but that's not.
No, but no, that's not the one.
That's not the one. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I I like the way in which even as we were getting all of these like answers to the questions that we've been asking so far, and they're answers that like we kind of predicted as we discussed last week, but they were really really satisfying. Like none of it came out in a way that was like, oh okay, yep, I saw that coming. It was satisfying and it was earned, and it came about. The delivery still felt in keeping with, I don't know, the like fundamental weirdness of this show.
Yes. Yes.
So I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Yeah, I did as well. And there was a moment when I was watching and was like, yeah, obviously I'm loving this. And I thought, okay, this is favorite episode of the bunch so far. But I had to like immediately edit and acknowledge to myself that the reason that this works so well is because the first 3 episodes laid down so much of the groundwork. The reason that it felt like so satisfying here is, we had all of these pieces, we have all of this confirmation of our theories, and we see different pieces from different angles now. So it works so well because of the other episodes. So to say that this one was a favorite, it was just like the right payoff, especially like here, smack dab in the middle of what's going to be a pretty short season. So
Mm-hmm.
we like from the beginning, from the blip on, like I was 10 minutes in and I realized like I had squeed 10 times. Like I was like, oh my God. So it's like every minute
Mm-hmm.
something new was causing me to like sort of have that like excited reaction or whatnot. So I
Mm-hmm.
had a blast. I had
Mm-hmm.
a freaking blast.
Yes. Yeah. I You mentioned at the in sort of the beginning in your plot synopsis, and I was like, you have to keep going because this will be a whole conversation. So now that we finished the synopsis, I do want to
Uh-huh.
go like the blip, dealing like the fact that this we more or less begin post second snap, the unsnap, I don't know. I that like that for me was like moment one of like, yes, simply because like that this I'm pretty sure I talked about it on our MCU episodes that like it was my one big frustration with the way that Shield had gone like completely off into its own like weird little direction, is that I was like, this is the perfect place. This would have been the perfect place to give like a hint of like the real world ramifications of all of this. Like we got a little bit of it in Homecoming, but that was like comedic, you know. And it was great. Like I really enjoyed the way that Homecoming dealt with the like the unsnap pieces of it, but also like this is a huge deal for lots of real people. And I don't know, the like the trauma circle scene or whatever that they did in the movie, like that, it didn't fit in that space in a way that like this did. Like this was it wasn't a lot, it was like fairly quick, but I felt like it communicated so much of just like the larger implications of the idea that like half the world's population disappeared and then suddenly they reappeared. And yeah, and setting it in the hospital really was a great way to sort of, so like whereas Spider-Man Homecoming gave us this sort of very comedic like high school, and suddenly now the kid who was 11 is your classmate and like haha, but like now it's, you know, the other sort of side of that, having it start in the hospital in this way, and like everything about that was just, I loved it. I was so excited to sort of to see that represented. And I guess it also rings a little bit different in this sort of precise moment when hospitals are are also you know, too full for
Yes.
wholly unrelated reasons, but
Yes.
narratively.
Immediate like pandemic thought was, oh yeah, our hospitals are full right now too. So
Yep. Yes.
yeah, I think that the thing is that, like, you know, there's a lot of consideration about what would be like the emotional ramifications of like a post blip world. And this was about a very like logistical thing. And it was not even in like, oh, a year out from the blip or a day out or a month out, but in the moment of like suddenly half
Mm-hmm.
the world's population rematerializing. What the heck would that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And to see it in that moment in the hospital where it was like immediate chaos and just, you know, everybody trying to, you know, the people who were there suddenly being surrounded by double the people, and then the people who are just coming back who have no idea that they've been gone for years. So it
Mm-hmm.
was just such a good moment, and like a good moment of continuity. Like that's the kind of payoff that I think that people who are fans of the MCU probably were coming to WandaVision
Mm-hmm.
for, was like that sort of continuity. So it was really interesting that this episode started there, because there, you know, there hasn't been a lot of that. There hasn't been a lot of callbacks to sort of the previous iterations, or even like a post Endgame world
Mm-hmm.
beyond what's Wanda up to now.
And why
So
is the Vision here?
yes.
Yes.
So that was really neat.
um yes, yeah, that, yeah. I also just really enjoy that as a way of contextualizing Monica too. Like I
Mhm.
think that I on the in the first 2 weeks ago, when I mentioned that I knew who she was from, like I had seen it on IMDb, and I don't even remember why. Like I was looking for wholly unrelated reasons, and I had noticed that like I was like, oh, Monica Rambeau, okay, that's weird. But all right. And also it's an adult. Like what's going on here? I guess that makes sense. The
Yeah.
movie was Captain Marvel's in the 90s. Anyway, sorry. Um, all of that, yeah, I knew that, but it wasn't, as I said then, it like it was not, it didn't feel like a real spoiler to me, because it's just like I I have no context for what this means or why this matters. We've only ever seen her as a like a little kid who is, I don't know, there in the way that little kids appear in some of the Marvel movies. Not really there. It's not like not a
Correct.
uh, not a character who exists for their own agency. Um, so like, you know, had no way to contextualize what that meant. And so I appreciated the way in which they gave her so much context very quickly without it feeling info dumpy. And so like
Mhm.
introducing her, like that was the other thing that was great about that moment, is that we're thrown into this extremely chaotic moment, which is fitting with this show. Like there was nothing about that was like, am I watching the right show? Like, sure, I'm watching the right show. I don't know. You can do. Whoa. Yes, like glitchy stuff is happening, to your point, even if you don't, even if you hadn't, even if you were just coming to WandaVision knowing nothing or whatever, like that, nothing about the idea of people sort of glitching into place seemed out of seemed like something that would not happen on this show. It all fit. It gave her a like very legitimate and practical reason to say like my mom, like that line like fits
Yeah.
and makes sense, and didn't, I mean, I was joking about it being a like this is who this character is, but like it made sense, you know. It wasn't just that. And then sort of like throwing, like going from there into the sword stuff. They just did so much to contextualize her in like 3 minutes. It was, I appreciated all of that as well.
Mhm. Even just in the little moments too. So seeing her getting reacclimated in Sword, her reaction when the guy was like, "You don't work here," and just sort of like, her sort of like calm confidence about it, and all of those little moments like very quickly communicate to you who Monica Rambeau is.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree that they did a great job in that regard as well. I just God, it was so exciting too to see it like all fall into place and really understand like how she ended up in this whole WandaVision thing. So after seeing what we saw and going back to some of our previous theories about Geraldine, do you think that in the world in the simulation she knew, how much did she know what was going on and how much was she playing a character?
I feel like to me, it feels like she didn't, it was the Ultron comment that like brought her back to herself.
Yeah.
Like I don't
Yeah.
think that she knew. I do still maintain that it wasn't, that it was after that she was like, she was still sort of confused, but she could tell that she had said a wrong thing, and so that was why she like that didn't, I don't know, I think it is open to interpretation whether the Ultron thing was sort of glitchy and then she actually did get, like properly drawn back into herself. But I think that the moment after that, where she, when Wanda is like, "What did you just say?" and instead she repeats the thing before that, that she said, like that to me still reads as a, okay, shit, that was not the thing to say. Quick,
Yeah,
let me
yeah, yeah,
say
yeah.
something else.
Oops.
Moment,
Oops,
rather
oops,
than,
oops.
yeah, yeah, oops, 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 control Z, control Z. Uh, um, so, yeah, but otherwise, my sense is that it was the twin thing that was like her sort of registering.
Yeah. And I think we have a sort of, I guess, confirmation in other characters, even like Wanda and Vision themselves, that they have these moments where they do come into themselves or they remember things outside of Westview. And, they kind of, wait, something's not right here. So
Mm-hmm.
it appears to me that that's what happened to Monica, that the twins triggered something in her where she was like, oh, yeah, Ultron, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then quickly realized, wrong, wrong thing to say. Uh-oh. Um, that's my current read on it, which was kind of where we were going with some of our theories. So that was great to kind of get that confirmation as well.
Sorry, I just got a text message about a SnarkSquad thing. Sam is wondering which Batman v Super. Are we watching the long Batman v Superman or the normal one? I don't know. That's a question we got to figure out later. Uh,
I'm confident in saying the normal, what the people saw in the theater. I think
Good.
is the one that we should watch.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The one that's long. There were a lot of O's in that text message. It sounds like I don't want to watch that one. Uh, I don't want to watch the one where you got to put all those O's on it. Anyway,
No.
WandaVision is what we're talking about now.
Um, yes. Okay. So I think anything else about Monica, I mean, I'm sure she'll come up
Y-
again
Yeah.
because I I want to get to like the other two characters that reappeared here. So I think we've mentioned previously, like even I knew WandaVision was gonna be a thing. I didn't even watch a trailer. I had no idea what this was gonna be about. Like totally going in with no context. So this has been a real treat. So when two familiar faces showed up, I will say that Jimmy Woo, like he said his name, and I was like, I feel like I know that guy. But it took a quick Google before I was like, oh, which makes sense because Ant-Man. What do I remember about that movie? Um, but also when Darcy shows up, I was immediately like, yes! such a good such a good moment
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for a truly a side character in like the Thor movies or whatnot. But Kat Dennings, great character. I don't know. That was fun for me. How'd you react?
Yeah, similarly, super delighted to see her, and see her get to do kind of a blend of, like she's here for the same I don't know, comedic relief that she serves in the Thor movies, but
Yes.
also she's taking on the expertise that her her co-stars would have had before, because it's five
Yeah.
years later. She's had or actually more than that, really, since the first time. I don't really know how much time is supposed to have passed since like Thor 1, but some years, some number of years have passed. So she's an expert in her own right now, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I for two characters that are wholly unconnected with the current storyline. I mean, what is the reason they are here? I don't know, but it's fun. And also it wasn't so unconnected that it felt like, shoehorned into me. Like, yeah, that guy's an FBI agent and she has expertise. Like, bring him on in. Like that felt like a natural, fine way to incorporate some side characters that would be fun for the audience, but not so much fan service that you felt like, okay, calm down. It just felt really
Yes.
natural to include them in the story.
Natural, but also like, again, the show will never shy away from being meta about it, and so like they even have Darcy flat out say, like, when she's going there, like, okay, so we're like a really random ass group of people because they don't know shit. Like they have no idea what's going on here. And so like it's sort of twofold. Like, one, she's telling us more about like the scenario, like as we're sort of introducing the sword half of this, Darcy is there to tell us Sword actually knows nothing, because they've brought a scientist from every possible discipline in to be
Right.
like, can you come like science this for us? Thanks. And then also, it sort of says like, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And it was again cool to see them sort of like rehash things now with added Darcy commentary and then seeing it from the sword side because there were so many things too that seemed nefarious. But now we're like, oh, like somebody was watching WandaVision and you got this feeling that it was like really creepy, like who's doing this? And then it's like, it's Darcy. And not only is she watching it, she's having a good a time
She's
as good a
invested.
time as I am sometimes, like she's invested.
Yes.
She's got a little teary at one point watching the
Mm-hmm.
twins be born. So it flipped the switch there for us in a way that was like really funny and charming to be like, oh, okay. There are a lot of still weird and like almost nefarious things probably at work, but the person in the control room watching the episode wasn't one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
uh Wanda shooting Monica out of the out of the simulation, still scary.
Yep. Super nefarious, as it turns out. It was precisely as it seemed.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yeah. Let's see. What else?
Karen says, I was so happy to hear Darcy was going to be in the show. I really thought we'd seen the last of her in the MCU, and she is delightful. Yes. Yeah. Also, just like, why would we see? Although, Natalie Portman is coming back. So if Jane, is that her character's name? If Jane is coming back, seems
Yeah.
like Darcy might too. in the Thor. I don't know. I actually don't. I know absolutely nothing about what the next Thor movie is, except that Natalie Portman is. I just dimly recall hearing that Natalie Portman is coming back, and just that registering as like a they did her character so dirty, so they're gonna they're gonna maybe try to right that wrong.
I cannot even think about even when I saw Darcy, like I immediately thought about like Natalie Portman in the Thor, like that connection, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like immediate, just like unhappiness at how they did Natalie Portman so freaking dirty in those movies. And I appreciate if they're gonna try and rectify that, but like, I don't know. We'll see. I'm very hesitant about that whole thing.
I mean, the fact that the new one is Taika Waititi again makes me feel like that. I have hope. I guess is she only existed in the two bad Thor movies, right? So, uh,
The two bad boys.
but anyway, uh, aside from the Thor movies,
Yes. Trying to think about like the other things that we saw sort of repeated or given context
the
in the show.
helicopter and the like
Yes.
drone bit. Oh, and
Yep.
the beekeepers too. That was really interesting too because I even
Yes.
after we had gotten the like seen the helicopter, like seen it be like the drone, and then it's this toy helicopter, like that was that it didn't entirely register to me that it had transformed just because
Mhm.
like the drone looks like a toy helicopter, like could not differentiate, although when we saw it on the show my assumption was that it had been like an act like I my assumption actually had been transformation. My assumption at the time was that there was like an actual helicopter that like got sucked into the vortex, and that like the thing that they had been hearing outside the window was an actual helicopter, and then somehow like Wanda magicked it or whatever, it turned into a part of the mystery of the show, actual helicopter became toy helicopter. But anyway, I had forgotten that. And so like we see the drone and I'm like, aha, yes, the drone, that's the helicopter she's gonna find. And so even so when we see the guys in their hazmat suits like heading into the sewer, I my first thought was like that I was misremembering something about the beekeeper thing. I was like, why did we think they were beekeepers? And then like it's like then they get out and like when we see I'm like, oh, like yeah, okay. Yes, I get it. Like I
Yeah.
it wasn't until it actually happened that I was like, okay, I now understand what is happening here.
I kind of had like the opposite thing where she brings out like the drone and I see the helicopter. And so that like I was like a helicopter, but that's not what we saw. Like I immediately
Mm,
felt like that wasn't what we saw, but my mind didn't make like the additional jump to, oh, it got transformed while it was in there because why would I think that?
right.
So I just was like that it looks like the helicopter, but it's not the one. So when it came back around, I was like, oh.
I
I
see.
see. And like, speaking of like little nefarious moments too, that moment where the hazmat suit guy is going in the sewer and we see like his tether like come undone. There was something about that moment that I was just like, oh no.
And then when it comes back up as the jump rope, like I just oof.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weird.
Yes, yeah, that was I feel like the most nefarious moment of this episode, even including getting the actual footage of what happened to Monica, just
Yeah.
because I don't know, we already knew, and because we know she's okay. Like I would say the thing about that moment, the thing that was scary about it in the moment, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't because I knew. I guess I will say the one and only reason that spoiler was spoilery is that in that moment I knew she was going to have to be okay because the show hadn't told us who she was yet. So
Right.
the like really the only sort of scary thing about that is like Wanda 100% could kill her real easy. So that's stressful and scary. But yeah, the beekeeper tether getting snapped was like very
Like,
big
oh
stress, big
no.
stress.
Yes.
Um
I thought it was really neat too how we've been seeing Wanda use her magic throughout this, but obviously it's been in keeping with sort of like the sitcom vibe and just like sort of the, whimsical nature of all that. But when she throws uh Geraldine, Monica, out of the world, there's a moment where she is more herself in that moment, and we see her use her magic in a way that felt like true to what we've seen in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
you get like the red sort of like graphics and the red sort of energy or whatnot, and even the way she moves is very more much more like, oh, Wanda, like that's her.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
and less like, bewitched and like just the things floating around and that sort of magic. So that was a neat moment as well, that also gave you that moment of, oh, here's that badass bitch
Yep.
that we know, like.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I speaking of which, I have no fucking clue what the moment possibly could have been in this episode where she was being where her one this is the one episode where she wasn't being told to like ham it up and she was being told to dial it back. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have no idea because this is the one where she's been the most not a sitcom character. She was like herself
yes,
from I mean she's not in very much of this episode and
not at all.
she's like herself for the bits of it that she is in. So I failed completely at our fun game of guess that moment. Uh
Oh, my only thought would be, now that I'm thinking about it, because I completely forgot about that, because I immediately thought that moment would be something comedic, because that is, what we've been seeing is,
yes.
that she would be hamming it up. So my only thought is maybe she was hamming it up on like the evil side, like that moment with Geraldine, she was going like ham
Mhm.
in some way, that they were like, mm-mm, like be scary, but not like murdery. You know what I mean?
Yes, my I guess now that I am actively trying to think about it, my thought was more my guess is the other side of it is when Vision comes back and she's like trying to, revert back into being a sitcom character and not somebody who just magicked a person through several walls and like
Yes.
a force field like that bit like maybe that she overdid the everything's fine, honey, like Stepfordy vibe. But truly, I have no idea. Um,
So, Amy in the chat says, I think one of the questions they wrote on the whiteboard was why hexagons or something like that, which I assume is related to the beekeeper. I'm curious to see what the context is for hexagons. So, the hexagon thing, I didn't see the why hexagons, but now reading this, when Monica first steps up to the force field that is blocking Westview, and you kind of see the whatever the graphic of it, I felt like those things that were showing up were hexagons as well. Like that force field was made up of hexagons, if I'm remembering correctly. So that might be some sort of pattern that they're noticing in the like, I don't know, the glitchiness or the, you know, I don't know, whatever Wanda has created has something to do with hexagons. I don't know if that's part of why it is a beekeeper or whatnot, but that's kind of where my mind first went, was that it has more to do with whatever the structure or the magic is of what
uh-huh.
Wanda is doing.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I to Nick's point, both nervous and excited that this might turn into a better Phoenix saga. I don't like the overuse of trauma and woman unleashes out of control power, but Wanda is scary as heck. I was thinking about that earlier today too, because like having her have another sort of dark storyline is interesting because I remember watching an interview with Elizabeth Olsen from like right around one of the last two Avengers movies. I forget which one, but somebody was asking her questions about her character, and they always do the sort of like comic book, do we think we're ever going to see this story or whatever. And I forget the phrasing of the question, but she got asked a question that was basically like, do you think we're going to see like a dark Wanda, like a Wanda do you think we're going to see Wanda be evil? And there was like an earnest defensiveness in which like within her sort of response of like that's how she was introduced, like bitch, I'm good now, like she's a good guy now, leave her
Yeah.
alone. I yeah, so seeing her have this kind of darker storyline is very very interesting. um
Yeah,
yeah.
and so it also brings into question this idea of how out of control Wanda actually is in this
Mm-hmm.
case, and how much of this I guess she is controlling. So we don't have the full answer to that yet, But I think that there's an argument for this not being quite that trope because what she's doing is taking her trauma and taking her powers and controlling things in a way that she probably doesn't feel outside of what she's of this that she's created, right? Everything else is out of control. And so she's decided to exercise control in this way that is scary for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
including everybody who lives in Westview, but it's not necessarily like woman on a rampage either,
Mm-hmm.
quite. It's almost the opposite of that. She is controlling every little thing
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I think feels natural to a story about trauma because that is like a very natural response to trauma is trying to control the things that you can in a very like in a hyper way. So um related trope, but not quite that like trauma woman out of control.
I agree completely, and I would add to that the fact that Geraldine slash Monica is perfectly fine when she lands outside the force field feels like proof of that sort of sense of it, like given uh, if it were pure physics, the way that she shot, like through all the walls, like whatever, like that, if it weren't a product of magic, all of that should have killed her, right? But Wanda in like full control of her magic was not like that was not a shot to kill. That was get the fuck out of my tightly controlled community. You're not welcome here. But like you can go about your life out there. Uh
And you're not welcome here specifically because you brought the trauma I'm trying to keep out into my community. Like,
mhm.
no, it doesn't go here. My trauma doesn't go here. So, like, she was happy to have Geraldine around as long as she was like fitting inside of the narrative. But the
Mhm.
moment she was like, you said what? Was that an Ultron I heard? Because that's a no from me, dog. Um,
Yes.
we also we had a moment like in that the final piece of this is really the only like sort of new content that we get from Wanda and Vision. So that's a big like departure from the first three episodes that we saw. And so we had that moment where Wanda is seeing him basically as he was dead, So
Mhm.
his coloring has changed. He's got the wound in his head. But it it brings up all of these new questions, or I guess they were questions we always had, but these are questions we haven't quite answered about what the heck Vision is or is doing,
Mhm.
because he keeps having these moments of like, we could leave here, like something's not right, and she's like, no, shh, like
Mhm.
we're fine. This is home. So how much, for somebody who is exercising so much control over all of this, there are still these moments where it doesn't seem like Vision is under that control, and
Uh-huh.
he's questioning and he's pushing. So what the heck is Vision? Is he alive? Is he a figment of her magic, of her imagination? Like, what the heck is going on
Uh-huh.
there?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that remains an open question.
Yeah.
I feel my guess right now is like figment of her imagination, and that's sort of like it's like conscience adjacent sort of thing that's happening there. Um that in imagining Vision as like fully and completely as she could, she would also imagine him, being like a voice of reason to her, like like that is part of the her successfully filling out this world and like the character of Vision in her head. But I don't know. We're gonna find out. TBD.
Is there any way that what we're seeing is some sort of reanimated Vision, and her seeing him like not dead is like part of her magic, but he is actually there in some sort of reanimated way, gash in head and all? A
I
theory I'm throwing out there.
I don't like it. Once you added gash and head and all, like I like that takes on like I don't know, like she dragged his
Zombie,
she
want
she
zombie
dragged his
Vision.
corpse to Westview and then like did this magic. I don't.
I mean, she only got from like upstate New York to Westview, New Jersey. She crossed one state line with his corpse. Like, travel across the country.
Crossed one state line with his corpse. That's your summary of why this is all totally cool. I mean,
not totally cool.
I will die. I will lose my fucking mind if anything remotely like this is the case. I'm so glad we're having this conversation like recorded so that we can, like come back. Yeah, zombie vision, yes. They are connected by the okay, wait, Nick. They are connected by the Mind Stone. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Like, I know that that's what. So, because he's dead because the gauntlet exists, and if in order for the gauntlet to be like wholly complete, the stone has to be gone, and he needs the stone. So like, there's no way he can be dead. I forget. I don't know how she is tied to the stone. I don't remember this at all. But also yes, the Wanda just driving with Vision's corpse is the road trip movie we all need but don't deserve. Yeah, I mean, that could also, that is another like movie trope they can give. Toss that episode in there for good measure.
I'm literally dying. I know that I brought it up, but I almost regret it. Oh man.
But yeah, I'm still waiting on Nick to explain, because Nick or somebody else to explain to me what Wanda's connection to the Mind Stone is, because when she killed him with her Mind Stone powers, who knows if there was some transfer. Okay. So yes, Nick's theory is that possibly there could have been some sort of transference from when she killed him with her Mind Stone powers. Got it. Okay. All right. I'll allow that. That feels plausible to me.
Okay, so if there's a piece of Vision like
more
living in
to
her
me than
head,
the zombie road trip.
Okay, if there's a piece of Vision living in her head, that could also, I don't know, be part of what triggered all of this. Like that would be super traumatic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
throwing that one out there too.
Yeah, well, yes.
Listen,
yes.
throwing out these theories has worked well for us, because I feel like even though we gave like 10 theories over these last few episodes, like we got some right. Like we ended up at this place where we were on track with some of these theories. So that was, to me, like I said last week, it felt satisfying, because I was like, yes, like that was a thing we said, we knew it was coming, sort of thing. So it was fun.
The idea that she returns from the snap, they defeat, I mean, based on what we have already seen, based on the rest of this episode, this is like they defeated Voldemort, and sorry, I was reading the comments. Oh no, Mari went away. I believe that her webcam just died. So we're gonna wait for her to come back. I just said Voldemort because I'm reading the comments, and Karen made a Harry Potter connection. They defeated what's his name? Big Purple Man. What the fuck is his name? Oh my god. They defeated him, and then it seemingly instantaneously, like once that is over, Wanda is here in this little world or whatever, because or near instantaneously, right? So presumably this is her coming, like, so she comes back, she participates in the big fight or whatever, and she's still revved up because she all of this is, she was in the middle of fighting him anyway. Thanos, thank you. Thank you guys. I think we are way ahead of the chat. Interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, I think that right. So she comes back. I'm sorry. I'm trying to like follow the thread
Yes.
of Mari's theory as we wait for her webcam to come back. But she so Wanda gets snapped away and immediately post trauma. She went to Tony's funeral. So I couldn't remember actually. Like I have no recollection of who all. I assume everybody is in that shot. Tony's funeral is also one of those things that I like pretend didn't happen because it makes me so angry. I mean, specifically, it makes me angry because it's part of the larger ways in which that movie was just everything about the way that it treated Black Widow was garbage, super garbage,
Yes.
and I hate it. And Tony's funeral was like
Still
was
a
the
big mad.
yes, Tony's funeral was the icing on the cake of like fuck you guys, man. I just
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So yes, so sure. I assume everybody is confirming that we did in fact last see her at Tony. Oh, she and Clint had a moment at the funeral. Okay, cool. So we're confirming that she was indeed at the funeral. That's the last time that we saw her, a couple days post, which I guess makes sense because because Monica had to have, she's at the hospital and then yes, presumably she collects herself for a couple days before actually immediately returning to Sword. So sure, a couple days later, all of this happens. But anyway, so a couple days later, she realizes that she still has like some fragment of her dead boyfriend who she just had to kill to try to save the world or whatever. Yeah, all of that would be indeed deeply traumatizing and fucking with the mind of the most powerful person to ever exist. Seems like it could have consequences.
Some, at least for the town of Westview, which I'm dying to know why.
Yes.
Why
Yes.
Westview?
Yes. That is
Well,
my big question now. I assume that it has something, my guess is going to be that it's going to have something to do with Catherine Hahn. Because the internet seems convinced that she is somebody significant, but everybody who's in the town they're presumably just like people from, like they were already in that town is the vibe I got from this episode.
yeah. And of the characters, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I did not think about this in the moment, so I'm just like kind of reflecting back. But of the characters that they identified in the cast, I don't think Catherine Hahn was one of them. Like we got Herb,
Uh-huh.
we got like a few other ones that we had seen, but I don't think Catherine Hahn. I don't know
Yes,
if you remember in the chat.
I do not remember seeing her as part of the people that they identified. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Nick
Nick
says he
says
still
that
thinks that she's
yeah.
trapped, but is also enjoying the reprieve from her trauma. Interesting. I mean, I won't discount the idea that like something propelled her there, but I don't think that she is trapped, there. Like I think we have seen her exert too much agency over this world for me to
Mhm.
believe, like the fact that she could
Correct.
choose, the fact that she could eject Monica from it tells me that if she wanted to, she could also take herself out of it. And like that to
Correct.
me feels like a big part of what Vision is like serving to do, is be like, we can go. And she's like, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So
And the way she's editing things as well, like the jump rope thing, and it is too much control. It would have to be it's not impossible. It would have to be a very specific and weird explanation to kind of encompass why she can affect everything about this world except for she cannot leave.
mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I don't know. There could be an explanation there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Without spoilers, there's things in this and in the Loki trailer that hint at the possible next big bad for the Avengers.
Mm,
Interesting.
yeah.
I didn't even realize that there was a trailer for the Loki. All I had seen was like stills and just like Loki. It's coming. Loki is the extent of I'd seen trailers for what's the other thing? The Captain America. Not him, but his two friends. I'm really great at this, at remembering characters' names.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I knew what you meant.
Cap's
So
friends, they got their show coming up.
yeah. I again haven't watched anything or kept up with any of this news. So I haven't seen the Loki trailer. Freaking Loki. I'm gonna hate watch that.
Mm. I'm
I just
I
cannot.
I am actually genuinely excited about it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think like I get it. I agree with you in terms of I
So mad.
also,
I was so mad.
as documented in our episodes of the podcast, like going into it, it was wild. Just like the degree to which people are like, we love Loki. And we're like, okay, but like the genocides, right? Like we're just gonna. That's not. Oh, okay. That was cute and funny. Okay, okay, cool. All
Mhm.
right. But I don't know.
And you're on team, cute and funny.
Well, particularly because no, the thing is they're going so far back. They're going back to like before that, right? So this is ultimately going back to like the first of, I don't know. It feels like they're going far enough back that I am,
Mhm.
it's like pre that it's before the genocides basically. So that seems like okay, if
A
that's
smart move.
yes. Yes.
So I know I had like sent you a message earlier as I was mid watching, and I was like, I'm having so much fun. And we talked a little bit about the way that this episode like answered a lot of things and like confirmed a lot of things, but left other questions open. And we've talked a lot about them throughout. So like, what the heck is going on with Vision and all of that? But are there any other big questions that you have open? Um, or like things that this like opened up now that you're like, ooh, I wonder where we're going next.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, probably, but there were so many. There were so many things like big sort of questions that I feel like this introduced, um, in terms of. I am super curious about like the whole sort of. I am very interested in the whole like sword infrastructure that is just outside of there. I don't I don't want more than like maybe one. I don't want there to be a ton of sort of sword centric episodes. Like I would like to go back to a Wanda, let's go like this was fine for the summary of that, but I am there. I don't know, there are a lot of like little details about that I am like kind of interested in, and to see where they are going with that. uh we talked about this last time, or maybe it was in the first week, but when we were sort of talking about like the little that we knew about like what exactly sword even is, and they touched on that too with Monica, and telling her that she was grounded, like that, and that being a big deal, that that she only you can only do stuff on Earth, and like that the equivalent of like you're assigned to desk duty for sword
Mhm.
is you can do your normal job, but you have to do it on Earth. Is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's, I don't know, that is like an interesting detail about where that whole sort of thread is going to go. I don't think like that doesn't feel like this show, but it's like a thread that I think that it is interesting that they have tossed out there. But I don't know. I just am enjoying like the ride that they're taking us on in terms of what the fuck is going on here.
Yeah.
Do you have
I
any big
think
questions?
the not a huge question, but one of the things that Darcy brought up, which has been one of our questions kind of all along, but kind of honing on not only like the sitcom and broadcast portion of this, but like the changing of the decades. Like
Mm-hmm.
she had a very pointed question of like, why are we going like it was the 50s and the 60s and the 70s? Like, why is this happening? And I'm like,
Aside
why
from
is this
just to
happening?
satisfy me, which also, yeah, all of Darcy's
Yes.
commentary was like,
As the
yes,
audience stand-in.
uh-huh,
Yes.
uh-huh. She was
So
standing in for us so well.
yes, that is still like a thing that I'm like, that is a great question. I would love to know. And I would love to know if there's going to be any rhyme or reason. Like, are they going to answer? Is it just going to be like, magic,
My just since we're tossing stuff out there just to whatever, so my attempt at an answer, my guess, you
uh,
threw out a question, I'm gonna do some speculating,
uh-huh.
that it's like tied, that it is a degree to which this is that Wanda is not actually fully in control, like that there is like something, it's like it is in much the same way that like her pregnancy, like the pains, the like labor pains or whatever, caused the stuff in the apartment to go, or in the house to go haywire, and like that was sort of comedic, but like on a grander scale, that it's like her grief is like, it's like shaken foundations are causing the jumps, you know, because like the jump to the 70s happens right after the beekeeper um and the, yeah, I don't know, that's my guess, that there's some sort of connection there. So I wouldn't be surprised if, okay, so Gerald, she had to blast Geraldine away, and then, you know, like we're going to be in the 80s next week. That's
Amazing.
where my head's at. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say the other thing that I just wanted to, like, I don't know, shout out, and we've talked a little bit about like the shortness of the episodes in the beginning, to be like, I'm not mad at it, like, especially when it wasn't giving us answers, because they were just so bite-sized and easily consumable.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm at the point where I'm like, these short episodes, like, I'm almost impressed how these like really tiny episodes are giving us so much. And like I feel like I felt the fullness of that here, where I was like, ooh, layers and all these things. And I mean, we're having these 1 hour conversations about like 20-minute episodes. They're really bite-sized, and the entire format of it, and how they're, you know, having to tell us the story with so much economy, like it is very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it really gives you that sense of they're giving us a very specific thing, like this really weird specific experience, and part of that are these little short episodes. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also very much appreciate that they can do as much as they are doing in tiny little sections. It is really great for us, having made this decision to do these hour-long conversations without realizing that they were half an hour-long episodes. So thanks for that.
yeah.
But yeah, I also love it in part because I this is something that I am actively so excited to get to the end of, but not only to like get to the end and know all the things, but because I'm so excited to get to the end and then start over. Like
Mhm.
100% shortly after we get to the end, I will rewatch the whole thing with like, now that I know, like go back and, you know, spot the pieces or whatever.
I
And I
said
can do that
20
in
and
half a
not
day because
30.
they're half-hour
I know.
episodes.
And
So
I said 20 and not 30-minute episodes because the credits are so freaking long. The credits are like 5 to 6 minutes of the 30-minute episode that you're watching. So, like, are we watching a 30-minute episode? I think not. But nice try.
I feel like you are the professor being like, I saw you changing the font
Padding
size
out.
of the spaces after your periods, okay? Uh this is not a
Uh,
5-page paper. Okay. Well,
that's all I got.
yeah, that's all I got too, unless
I
there are
mean,
any
I
other.
feel like Zombie Vision was a hell of a contribution,
Yeah,
so,
zombie vision, I feel like that's really the essential takeaway from this conversation. Zombie vision, and also that I remember many details but no names. Name a character, I can't do it. Can't name a single character. uh so anyway, um unless there are any other questions or final thoughts from the chat, I guess we're done here. We did it. We talked about another episode, and I'm excited to do it again next week.
Same.
Okay, well, bye, friends. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.